Welcome back, you guys, and I do want to apologise for not being here for the past few days. Now, throughout the week, I have been working on some projects for future videos, and near the end of the week, I was getting severe sinus headaches. Now, I am prone to getting them. Like these past few days, all I can do is just lie down because when I stand up, it was getting super severe. So today, I'm not perfect, but I'm feeling a lot better, you guys, and you know, just forgetting the sub story, let's get straight into today's video. I'm bringing back another tier list video, and I want to break down and review every single transfer we've made throughout this entire decade, from 2010 going to 2020. It's going to be a massive video. I'll be reviewing a ton of players over the past 10 years, so I hope you guys do enjoy. But before I get into anything, today's video is brought to you by the OneFootball app. You guys, download the OneFootball app. It is the best companion app on the market. So many useful features, so easy to use, so quick, so convenient. It's why the app exists. I use it every single time, and everyone that downloads it finds the merit in the app. You guys, try it out for yourselves. You'll find a link below in the description. And without wasting any more time, let's get straight into today's video. Now, unfortunately, you guys, I did spend a lot of time organizing things because my original plan and idea was to review all the players year by year. However, when you put all this stuff into tier lists, it just randomizes everything, so I've wasted so much time for no reason. So, starting with the first player, we start with Oriol Romeu. Now, Rafa Benitez was the manager at the time to really give him a real opportunity to play. He was signed when Andre Villas-Boas was our manager. He didn't get too much game time. He had a bit of a, solid reputation signing from Barcelona. However, when you consider how much money he costs, you know what? I think it would be harsh to say he was a flop. Unlucky, I think that's a bit harsh as well because, he did get opportunities, but I think Romeu, as he's shown throughout his career so far, wasn't of the highest level. So for me, this was just an economical signing. Moving on to Lucas Piazon. Now, you know what? I have to say he's a flop. Now, it is harsh, I do understand, because, when we signed him, he was signed for a lot of money. He had a big reputation coming from Sao Paulo. We beat off competition from tons of clubs to sign him when he was a 17-year-old. However, he was unlucky in the sense that, around that time, we didn't rate youth, we didn't care about youth, we weren't giving youth any opportunities. However, under lots of managers, he has been involved in pre-seasons and, managers still haven't used him. So in that sense, for me, Piazon is a flop. Moving on to Kevin De Bruyne. De Bruyne is one of the most unluckiest players over the past 10 years without doubts, because when he was still here and if Mourinho was not our manager, I guarantee that he'd be playing all the time. Now, it seems absolutely crazy that we had a talent like him and Mourinho just couldn't see it with his own two eyes. I understand why. Mourinho is the type of guy that he looks at players and their defensive work rate, but he cares about what they're doing in our own half. With De Bruyne, with a player like De Bruyne, you look at his offensive and defensive work rate in the opponent's half, with his pressing, his energy, his willingness to run behind the lines, constantly pressing on the front foot too. It seems absolutely crazy that Mourinho did not value these qualities, and, he made quite a bit of money for us. Wolfsburg signed him for decent money. However, it's always going to be a case of what if. So for me, De Bruyne is an unlucky player. Moving on to Gary Cahill. Gary Cahill was here for a long time. I remember when he was originally signed from Bolton. I remember the fan base was a bit skeptical, thinking, okay, Bolton, he's been okay this season, but can he make this step up for a club like us? Now, I think it's safe to say that Cahill did. Now, that doesn't mean that Cahill was one of our best defenders, of course not, but he was a very good player, very solid player. And if you're asking me, I think he was a bit of a cult player. Cahill was there for big moments. Defensively, he had, a lot of good parts of his game. One thing I liked about Cahill the most was his ability to just win those last-hit tackles inside the box. And when it came to scoring important goals too. So for me, Gary Cahill is a cult signing. Moving on to Thibaut Courtois. Oh, he did not leave things the right way. Now, I know some of you guys are probably thinking, you want to see like a little snake segment down the left-hand side. You want to see a snake tier? Come on, I can't be doing that, you guys. Courtois, oh, you know what, of course he was a very good signing. He was a top tier signing because he made money for us. He was one of the best keepers of his generation as well. And we signed him when no one else knew anything about him. Signing from Genk all those years. It's a shame that we couldn't keep him to sign. However, you know, I felt like a lot of our top players around that period were getting quite disillusioned with the club. And for me, you have to blame the club for that. So for me, Courtois was a top tier signing. Moving on to Ramirez. Now, I understand that, you know, everyone remembers the only good thing he did, and that was that goal against Benfica. Now, for me, you guys, you know, I've been a season ticket holder since I was a kid. I saw Ramirez, and, you know, he was signed after that period where we had such great midfield players like Essien, Ballack, Lampard, etc., etc. So I was always going to compare his abilities to those guys. And for me, I thought Ramirez's passing accuracy was never as good. He was constantly messing up the forward pass as well. And you know what, even though he had his merits, I didn't think he was that great for us. I didn't think that most of the games he played, he was putting in top class performances. For me, I expected more. And I don't care that he scored 1 or 2 great goals. That's not good enough for me. He needs to do more. For me, I expected more. Now, moving on to Lukaku, I think this is quite simple. This is an easy one. He was an unlucky signing. Now, let's say when we signed Lukaku back then, and let's say we signed him today, his career, you know, even the player's abilities would be very different. You know, Lukaku was signed as a 17-year-old, one of the, you know, biggest young players in the world at the time, you know, scoring goals for fun at Anderlecht, you know, 1 and 2. You know, his physique, his size, his goal scoring abilities. It seems really crazy that he was not given a fair opportunity at this club. It really seems crazy, and it just really goes to show you just how much we disrespected young players back then. Lukaku signed as a fan. He had the abilities. I think his career has been very good. For me, he's one of the top 10 strikers in Europe. You know, he's done it at Man United, at Inter Milan too. It seemed like he was destined for greatness at this club. However, you know, things just never worked out. So for me, Lukaku was an unlucky signing. And now we move on to Juan Mata. Juan Mata is the reason why I fell out of love with Jose Mourinho. I'm sorry. Now for me, that season, the 13-14 season when we sold him, if we had kept him, I think that we could have potentially had a chance at winning the league. We missed a player with creativity, 100%. And Mata, for me, when he signed, he was like one of the few players to take up that Zola mantle. You know, his left foot was unbelievable. A guy, you know, a cam which is very rare who could score and get assists. You know, Mata could dictate the play. Free kick set piece specialist, his corner in the Champions League final where Didier Drogba scored it. For me, the only player at that time who could have put a cross in like that. Not even Lampard would have done that. Only Juan Mata, because that was an amazing quality that he possessed. Honestly, he should be a legend for us because the way he started his career here, absolutely unreal. And Mourinho messed that up because Mata wasn't 6 foot. Absolute nonsense. I'll never forgive Mourinho for that. For me, Juan Mata is a cult signing. Now we move on to Lamisha Masonda, and you know what, I probably have to say flop. Didn't really get any loan moves, and I think, listen, if you're from our academy and you don't get like a loan move, I think that really sums it up. Moving on to Thorgan Hazard, he never had an opportunity. Right now he's at Dortmund, and you know, if you're playing for a team like Dortmund, one of the premier teams across Europe, then it's saying something about your ability. You know, he was not given any time, wasn't given an opportunity. Yeah, it makes no sense. I guess he made us some decent money from loan fees and transfers, but for me, I don't know. I think he was unlucky. Now, moving on to David Luiz, but this is the 2011-2012 David Luiz. I'm going to be doing 2 Luizes in this video, you guys, so stay tuned. When we first signed Luiz, I remember that game against Man United on his debut. Unreal goal against them. Straight away, I fell in love with the player. Now, he had his times where he was shaky, where, you know, his defending was a bit inconsistent. You know, if there wasn't a bias around the player, people would realize, okay, he's come from the Portuguese league. Let him bed in a bit. He's very young too. We signed him when he was like 21. But for me, Luiz had the personality to play with us. It was why he was respected by all his teammates. For me, the best ball-playing defender I've seen play for us. One of the best passes of the ball I've seen. Unreal player. But, you know, for a 2011 Louise, I'm going to say that he was a cult player. Now we move on to Wallace, and I know you guys are thinking, okay, who the hell is Wallace, Nini? Now, Wallace was a guy that, you know, we signed from Brazil for like nearly 6 million, so he was not cheap at all, this guy. You know, he had some preseason with us where he was looking okay. He had a loan move into Milan where he did nothing, and if you're wondering what he's doing with his career right now, he's not even playing football. The club has not signed him just yet. I don't know what's happened to his career, but for me, without a doubt, 100% a flop. And moving on to a guy that I feel was a flop as well, and that's Mohamed Salah. Now, he was signed as, you know, the German Messi at the time. For me, he found it hard because that season we signed him, we signed so many attacking players, so it was going to be hard for him to get game time. But he showed that he wasn't of the same caliber as those players. And, you know, he cost us nearly 10 million. Didn't really do too much other than, yeah, I can't remember many great moments, to be fair. For me, Marin was a flop. Now, moving on to Demba Ba. Easy cult status. Anytime you think of Demba Ba, you think of that slip, that Stevie G slip that cost them the league and Demba Ba slotting it in. Amazing moment, but for me, every time he played, he just played well for us. And if you're asking me, I do not know why he didn't get enough game time, especially that season, the 13-14 season, when Mourinho just kept, you know, he kept sticking with Torres every single time. If you're asking me, he stuck with him for the name. Every time Demba Ba played, he was solid. He was holding the ball up, acrobatic with his finishes. He had a lot more presence than Torres did too. He's unlucky, but, you know, for that CVG moment, he's a cult player for us. Now, moving on to Azpilicueta. You know, for the money we signed him for, the longevity he's had, he's rarely injured. He's been one of our most solid players throughout this past nearly 10 years. You know, I'd say for me, he is a legendary player because, you know, there's a chance that when his career does end with us, you know, he's going to be remembered for a very long time. So for me, Aspi is a legendary player. Moving on to Victor Moses. Now, he was signed around the same period as Aspi. He's still with us. He's had a lot of good moments for us, honestly. Under Conte, I thought he was very good, very solid. And every time he was given opportunities in pre-season, he looked good too. You know, Victor Moses for me is like on the same tiers as guys like your Bellettis, for example, where, you know, maybe a squad player at heart, but was forever solid. So for me, Victor Moses definitely deserves to be in this tier. And now moving on to Oscar. Now, for me, I wish Oscar got more time. Now, he is synonymous of the negative football we played under certain managers. Oscar's in the same mold as modern day number 10s in the sense that, you know, he could press on the front foot. He was very creative. We rarely got to see that because Mourinho cared about his defensive work way more, allowing Cesc to obviously, you know, take that cam role instead. We did not allow Oscar to fully blossom, to fully show his creative talents. It was ridiculous and synonymous of just poor management at the time. The club at that point in time, we kept hiring stupid managers that clearly didn't have any idea on how to use attacking young players. Oscar, for me, if we signed him today, when he was a 19-year-old, he would be a completely different player. Now, moving on to Eden Hazard. This is easy, a legendary player. Easily one of the greatest players in our history. Honestly, a privilege to see a player in his prime play for us. Not one of the best, for me, the best dribbling player in the Premier League. I've never seen someone consistently beat his man. He played the game with a smile on his face. He played it for fun. And it's rare that you see players with that mentality in the game because, listen, when you play football at this level, that fun, you know, it gets coached out of you. It's a job. You've got to be professional. It's hard for players to keep that demeanor and that obviously spirit for the game. But for me, Hazard is a player that we'll be telling our kids and our grandkids about. I know that as time goes on, his reputation will be diminished in a sense because, you know, we're seeing it today. You know, you look at stats and people think that, okay, because I saw your stats from, you know, times back, it means that I know what player you are. Absolute nonsense. But Eden Hazard is an absolute legend. Privileged to see him. And it's a shame that he couldn't stay at least one more season because if he was here with us for this season, you guys, there's a possibility that, you know, we're at least second place at least. Moving on to Bertrand Traore, and yeah, you know, young player. He was signed under very like brooky circumstances, but when he played, I thought he was okay for us. But you know, we sold him for decent money. So I'm gonna have Bertrand as unlucky, because let's say he was here for maybe 1 or 2 more seasons. Listen, maybe it'd be a bit more different. But now we move on to Perica. And I know you're thinking, who the hell is Perica? He was a Croatian target man that was part of the Emanalo loan signing, you know, saga, you know, project that he had. He's not really doing too much. It was never that great. Again, flop. We now move on to Christian Cuevas. And, you know, he was signed as a 17-year-old from the Chilean League from O'Higgins, I think. He had a loan spell at Vitesse. And, yeah, he had a few pre-seasons with us, but clearly he wasn't good enough to really be taken seriously. For me, an economical signing, made us decent money in the loan army. We move on. We now move on to Metaj Delac. He was signed in 2011. You know, I like him personally because he's given us a lot of very good accounts and insight behind the scenes during those periods. And yeah, I like when players, you know, especially players that have played for us, do give us that insight, because of course as fans, we want to understand and learn more about the club, players, etc, etc. However, you know, of course, it didn't work out for him here, and we didn't make too much money from him. So for me, unfortunately, he is a flop, even though he seems like a very good guy. We now move on to Mark Schwarzer. Easy, economical signing. He was signed as a 41-year-old in a backup goalkeeping role. So that's all to say, really. And again, similar to Metaj Delac, very likable. I've loved him on Alex Goldberg's podcast. I know, little quick shout out. But again, you know, they're the type of guys I like. We now move on to Samuel Etsu. Now, his signing was kind of funny because, you know, in the first decade when Roman took over, we were linked with all the best strikers from across Europe. And it's funny that, you know, we saw all these guys play for us eventually, but as they were closing their careers. Etsu was a very intelligent player. I think what really summed up his intelligence was the fact that he was like the ultimate goal hanger this decade. I mean, how many times did he get goals where he literally robbed the ball from the goalkeepers? And how many times have we seen strikers in the Premier League score in a similar manner? That really sums it up when it comes to Samuel Etsu. And, you know, of course, he was signed pretty late. He was fairly solid for us. And, yeah, I would just say he was an economical signing. We now move on to Christian Atsu. And, yeah, straight away economical signing. And the reason for this is because if you add up all of his loan spells, his transfer fees as well, I'm sure we made decent money on our initial investment. He cost us like 3 million from Porto, and I'm sure we made at least 3 times that amount. So again, economical signing. Moving on to Mark, apologies you guys, moving on to Van Ginkel. And Van Ginkel is an unlucky signing because, you know, the injuries unfortunately have just, you know, really just stalled his career at this point in time. You know, for Vitesse and back in Holland, for PSV, he was their captain. He was the linchpin in midfield. He was the box-to-box king that was getting goals. And, you know, even when he first signed for us, Mourinho was using him. And when does Mourinho ever use young players? So that tells you straight away that Van Ginkel had something about him. And let's not forget too, once the Premier League does return, there's a rule allowing you to register more players for your squad. So if Van Ginkel is fit, could we possibly see him play at some part if the league does return back? Anyway, we move on to Mohamed Salah. Again, unlucky. Unlucky because Mourinho used him out of position. You know, Salah, if we see how he plays today, you guys, you know, he plays close to the goal. He's a goal scoring, you know, inside forward. And Mourinho used him as a winger that had to receive the ball from the halfway line, that had to track back. And you completely misunderstood the player, not even understanding how to get the best out of him. And it's no surprise that Salah could not show his best. We move on to Andre Schurrle. And for me, he was a solid signing. Not only did we make a lot of money selling him, I mean a ton. I think we sold him for like over 30 million when we sold him to Wolfsburg. But when he did play, he was one of those guys where it's like, you know, you felt like he would have an impact either as a sub or playing in games. You know, very good eye for goal, very good shooting technique. However, the injuries affected him near the end, and then, you know, the dynamics at the end just didn't work out between him and Mourinho. But for me, you know, he wasn't a waste of money and he was a solid player. We now move on to Nemanja Matic, and for me, he was a top tier player because Matic, I think, is criminally underrated. The reason why he's underrated is because people don't really understand what's his best position. I've always thought he's a ball-winning midfield player because he has that ability to play in the final third. Very good passing too, very strong, moves the ball very quickly as well. However, under Conte, when he was used as more of a deep line playmaker, when Cesc Fabregas was out the team, you know, that was when his creativity and, you know, maybe his decisions on the ball were really criticised. And I was just thinking, well, that's not really what the player does. However, he did a very good job at that. And if you compare him to maybe a Georgie Neo, if you're asking me, even though I do really like Georgie Neo, Matic would edge that. He is a top tier signing because he was very good for us. Now we move on to Willian. And I know a lot of you guys would love me to put Willian as a flop. However, we got to keep it real. Willian is not a flop at all. For the money we signed him for, like, what, 32 million from Anzi, he's been consistently a key member of the team since. Personally, this season, his current season now, is one of his best performing footballing seasons for a while. I would have him as a top tier signing because he has been a very good member of the team. He's had a lot of quality, and I think he's been unlucky because he's had Eden Hazard playing down that left hand side, because if you want to see the best of Willian, you play him down the left hand side. We now move on to Kurt Zouma, and at this point in time I have to say he's a solid player. Now let's see what happens as time goes on. I'm sure maybe if I do one of these again in the future, I could have him a bit higher up. Kurt Zouma, when he started his career, was unreal. For me, he's always been extremely solid. I can't remember any flop games he's had, and I don't understand why he doesn't get enough respect. This season, personally, he's been our best defender, and I hope that obviously Lampard uses him more because defensively, aerially, defending on the ground, etc, etc, and last ditch tackles too, Zouma is that king for me. Now, we move on to, you know, one of the kings of this club in Didier Drogba. Now, I'm only comparing this time, you know, this past decade, you guys, not over his entire career here. Didier Drogba was a cult signing, I'd say, because of course when he scored that goal against United and, you know, still doing a shift for the team at his old age, at like, what, 36, 37, it's crazy, but it's typical Drogba. It's his typical Drogba. No surprise that Mourinho was still using him, and no surprise that Drogba was still doing his part for the team. We now move on to Thomas Kalash, and you know, he was very unfortunate because when he was signed with a massive reputation. I mean, we spent like 6-7 million signing him from the Czech Republic League. You know, for Vitesse in his early years when he was a teenager, he was in the team of the season twice playing as a right back. You know, he had that game against Liverpool too, where it was like his only games playing for us, where he was unreal against Luis Suarez. And again, he was unlucky because he never got a fair opportunity. You know, if we cared about using young players, I feel like Thomas Kalash's career would have been completely different with us. When you're part of the loan army, the dynamics are completely different. He was on a very nice contract, and when you're on like, let's say 40, 45k, you're going to be thinking about your life too. You're going to think about your family. You're going to think, okay, I could maybe try to progress my career, but I'm on a very stable contract that's earning me a lot of money, and I'm still playing football at a decent level. You know, these are the decisions that players have to make. So for me, he was unlucky. Moving on to Mario Pasalic, I'm going to have him as economical because, again, he hasn't even really played for us. So if he had played at least one game, it would be different. Again, when he was signed with a reputation of being like the new Lampard, etc, etc. He was loaned to so many good clubs, you know, your Milans, your Monacos, you know, in Spain as well. He's now finally settled at Atalanta. No surprise that now he's at a club where he's there consistently. So for me, he was a great economical signing. Now moving on to Loic Remy. Ooh, I'm going to have him as a solid player because that season when he was signed, when we had Diego Costa, he was like one of the best backup strikers in the league. You know, when he played, like, he scored a goal in every 3 games he played. Very clinical. Unfortunately, as time went on, I think with the lack of game time, that really started to affect his game, especially under Conte as well. For me, he's a solid player. Moving on to Felipe Louise, straight away unlucky because Felipe Louise is one of the best left backs of his generation, of this past decade, and to think that Jose Mourinho barely gave this guy game time. And don't even tell me it's because he wasn't performing or maybe he wasn't doing it in training. That is complete nonsense. Of course he was. Mourinho just favoured Azpilicueta, I guess because of maybe John Terry. John Terry, of course, needed that protection. Azpilicueta obviously ain't going to bomb forward too much. And this is really annoying because we could have potentially had Felipe Louise bombing down the left-hand side with Eden Hazard cutting inside. He'd probably still be with us if he was getting that consistent game time. No surprise that when he went back to Atletico Madrid, straight away regained his reputation as being one of the best left backs in the world. Again, we signed him for like ridiculous money, like 50 million, an absolute bargain considering all the money we spent for left backs. Never got an opportunity. Absolute bullshit. And you guys, look at the players in this tier list alone in the unlucky section. These guys barely cost us anything, and if they got fair opportunities, they'd still be here. We now move on to Moukaku. I thought he really struggled with the tempo of the Premier League, you know. He was one of those guys where when he controlled the ball, you kind of felt like, is he going to like control it? Is he going to do something good? He was really 50-50 in that sense. Of course, signing in January is going to make things harder. However, it was quite obvious that he hadn't settled here as well. And, you know, again, it was a waste of money. And the funny thing is, when we signed him, it was between him or Douglas Costa. And at the time, I was like, please, let's sign Douglas Costa. I mean, just looking at what he was doing for Shakhtar, the skill, play on the right-hand side as well, made a lot of sense. But I guess, you know, this was after the World Cup campaign. Mourinho going for reputation. For me, Cuadrado was a flop. Now we move on to Cesc Fabregas, and without a doubt, Cesc is going to be a top tier signing because, you know what? If Conte used him more, I think potentially Cesc could have one day have been a legendary player because, you know, he's one of the best technical players I've seen playing for this club. When we all signed him as a fan base collectively, we were still in shock. It was utterly surreal. Like, have we actually signed Fabregas? You know? As his career unwinded, you know, managers and your Contes and Sarris just didn't even give him a proper fair chance. And I thought it was really harsh and unfair. You know, especially under Conte, as a fan base, how many times did we call for Cesc to play or get more game time? You know, he was that creative figure, the guy who could make the perfect, you know, passes in the final third too. And we missed out on that. And yeah, I don't know why he didn't get enough game time. For me, top tier signing. And now moving on to Diego Costa. Easily a top tier signing. The only striker this past decade to get 20 goals in a season. He would have got more if, you know, we didn't play such negative football at times. Really sad how his career ended. Blame Conte for that. I don't know why Conte, you know, doesn't get enough criticism for that. His treatment of players and the squad at the time, it was really bad, you guys. You know, there's so much reports. I mean, go on Google and see it for yourself. He forced Diego Costa out. That should not have happened at all. I don't care at the time about player power nonsense. Of course, you want the players to be here. You know, managers are more likely to keep it moving compared to players. If Costa was sat at the club, we wouldn't have signed Morata, and I'm sure we would have got more goals and we'd have got more success. Yep, one of our best signings this past decade easily. Unbelievable price signed for as well, and straight away had the personality to play. Now, I was a massive fan of Costa because I was watching him play for Atletico Madrid when they won the league, and he was just world class. So yeah, Diego Costa, top tier signing. Moving on to Marco Emilia. Economical because he was signed in a backup role. Moving on to Alexander Pato. Now, he isn't unlucky, you guys. He's a flop. It's not necessarily his fault. A big part of that is due to the club. When he was signed, he just wasn't fit enough in the first place. So by the time he was able to get game time, it was like March, right near the end of the season. And on top of that, Gus Hiddink just didn't even bother give him a look at all. A complete flop. And it was really annoying because a part of me was like, okay, imagine we got to see Pato with a full pre-season. How could he have been? What could he have done? Could he have refound, you know, his past form? We'll never know. And now we move on to Papi Djibril. Now, I'm going to tell you guys this. At the time he was signed, there was huge outcry. People were angry. People weren't happy. we had aspirations of putting off some big, last minute signings, and then we signed him and Michael Hector. Now, the reason why I'm not going to call him a flop was because he was never signed for the team. He was signed for the loan army. Both those players were signed for the loan army. That's always been the case. I know, he played like literally 1 minute, and that's like the only game time he's got for us. But for me, he is an economical signing, because when you consider all the loan spells and the money we sold him for, I think we bought him for like 2 million, and we probably made like 10 to 11 million on profit on top of the player. So one of the best loan army signings, if you're asking me. And now we move on to Nathan. Now, when Nathan was signed, he came with a big reputation from Brazil. And, I actually saw him play a few games for Vitesse. Sky was showing like Eredivisie games, and when I saw Nathan play for Vitesse, he was in that similar mold to an Eden Hazard. At Vitesse, I think it didn't work out because he wasn't used in the right way. He was used as like a winger, which isn't really how he plays. I have to say that he was a flop, because I don't even think we got too much money for the player. Now, moving on to Fernando Torres, one of the big money signings at the start of this decade, 50 million from Liverpool. I know that a lot of people see him as a cult player. Amount of money, it was the most expensive signing in the Premier League at the time. He was here for a few seasons, not just that one season where he scored that goal against Barca. And I remember Torres and the frustration being a fan in the stadium. How many important goals did he miss? How much presence did he lack at times? It's kind of funny, he did improve as a player in the sense that he was someone that could actually hold the ball up and win balls aerially. Torres could never do that before. Maybe if we signed him and he was a 19-year-old, that would have been different, because he could have progressed into that role. However, he's a bit unlucky in the sense that when he was signed, he just didn't suit the team. We had a team that had goals from midfield. So to get those goals from midfield, you needed a striker that was going to hold the ball and bring the midfield into play. Oh, damn, this is a hard one, you guys. You know what? Poor expected more was harsh. I'm going to say he was unlucky. He was unlucky because tactically there was never a system around him. The only time we saw a glimpse of that was the 2012-13 season, where he scored surprisingly the most goals of his career during his spell with us. So for me, he was unlucky because he just wasn't signed on the right basis. We now move on to Matt Miazga. I think he's still currently with Reading. Yeah, funny, when we signed him, I think everyone was saying, oh, is he like America's next big hope? Of course he wasn't. And yeah, I'd say an economical loan signing. Michael Hector, it's the same scenario when it comes to Pape Djibril, an economical signing. Moving on to Falcao. Now, I'm not going to call him a flop. You know why? It's because when he did play, he actually was decent. Now, if people will say that Torres deserves to be maybe seen as a solid player or a cult player because of his work rate, well, that's exactly what Falcao showed. It was crazy to me, that we had him and Diego Costa, and not once did Mourinho ever try to play with two up front. Like how they used to play together for Atletico Madrid, and knowing that Mourinho that this past decade is like pro Atleti, is so obvious that he's been inspired by them. Falcao was wasted. We never got to see him get a fair amount of game time to really shine. The few minutes he did get, it wasn't like he was flopping and just being awful on the pitch. Unlucky. Falcao was unlucky, and we now move on to Kennedy. I'd say that he was unlucky because, again, when he played for us, when he signed for us, he played as a left back, and he was signed for us to play on the right wing. And it's mad because Mourinho in pre-season, especially against Barcelona in that game, he played him as a right winger, yet never played him there again. He was signed for his ability to cut inside and blast the ball in from outside the box. He was seen as a new Hulk. And what did we do? We turned him into a left back. Sums up how we mismanage all these young players. Absolutely criminal. I'm hearing he's doing okay at Sociedad, hopefully, because it's his first time, you guys, getting a consistent season of football, which is mad because he's like 22, 23. Let's see what Kennedy does. Let's see what he does. Moving on to Asmir Begovic, again, on economical reasons, fairly solid. I thought, economical signing, backup role. Moving on to Baba Rahman, and Baba was unfortunate. Now, you know what? He had some decent moments for us. The game against Paris Saint-Germain, that was like, okay, there could be a player here. I thought he looked very good against them. Still though, that season was bad for everyone. It was especially bad for new signings as well. And then, you know, Baba gets the injuries too. Things don't work out in his favour. It's a sad case because obviously he's my countryman from Ghana. I wanted to see him do well. He was signed very young, you guys, as a 20-year-old. You know, he was not signed as like a 25-year-old. He was 20. So for me, there has to be a degree of care for younger players. Nah, I'm sorry, unlucky. Never got a fair opportunity. Now, moving on to Pedro. And I'm going to have Pedro as a solid player. For some of you guys, I can see you calling him a cult player or maybe top tier. You know, I know he scored some absolute bangers for us. I know the goal against Everton, etc., does stand out. However, Pedro's solid and he doesn't reach that cult status because for me, he is the epitome of one game bad, one game okay, and one game goods. Was never consistent enough. Moving on to Eduardo, again economical. Now we move on to Marcos Alonso. This is a hard one. Is he top tier, cult, or solid? You know, when he has his moments, Alonso really has his moments. And his moments tend to win us games and get us crucial points. When he was signed with basically no reputation. I think he was signed as like a 5th or 6th choice option. He was not signed to be someone that was like, wow, this is the big marquee signing we want. I think, you know, testament to him at times, and, you know, of course being lucky because Conte was using a wing-back system, so that helped him at the time. You know, I think Alonso deserves to be a cult player because he is going to be someone that we will remember once he does eventually leave us one day. So for me, probably the epitome of a cult player this past decade. Moving on to N'Golo Kante, without a doubt, a legendary signing. Crazy that we were able to sign him for 30 million. Great business done there. You know, one of the few good things that Conte did, persuading him to sign. And it's kind of funny because, you know, Conte looked at N'Golo ahead of Kante at the time. You know, thank God N'Golo rejected us because imagine we would have missed out on Kante. Absolutely mad. Kante has an opportunity of maybe being a legendary player for us, like an all-time 11, depending on, you know, the next few seasons and how they develop. But for me, without doubt, this decade, one of the best signings we've made. You know, one of the key signing for how many years. Privileged to have him playing for us. Kante is a legendary player. We now move on to Yossi Benayoun. And Benayoun, you know what, didn't get too much game time, I remember. Yeah, you know, very classy, very good in tight areas. Didn't get too much game time, but when he played, you know, he was synonymous with players back then that, you know, when they got the game time, they were solid and they weren't flopping. So for me, yeah, he was solid for us. Moving on to Michy Batshuayi, and I'm sorry, but I've expected more from him. Again, this is like one of the final Emanalo signings, and, you know, didn't really work out in his favour. You know, Michy has got a lot of opportunities, you guys, and I have not seen him develop his game since the minute he signed for us. Now, I know having loan spells at Valencia and Dortmund, not having that consistency did not help. And of course, not playing week in, week out doesn't help as well. But, you know, he has got a lot of game time compared to other players on this list that didn't get anywhere near close to the same amount of minutes. And I'm sorry, I've expected more. Now we move on to David Luiz from, you know, the 17 period, moving on to, obviously, last season. And for me, he was a top tier signing because when Luiz signs, you know, he made that back three work. Every big game is one of our best players playing, and yeah, absolutely unreal for us. Now again, there's two Luizes for a reason because I feel like people conflate the two. Luiz in his second spell is one of the best Premier League defenders, one of the best ball playing defenders. Key passes, through balls, was great for the team, helped the team tick. I mean, we played better when David Luiz was playing. I'm always going to remember those passes between the lines he and Hazard. And obviously those through balls from deep. You know, if only he had a good striker to work with that could control those balls and do something with them, I'm sure he'd be remembered even more. But for me, David Luiz, for, you know, the money he cost, was without doubt a top tier signing. Moving on to Caballero, he's been solid. Very solid whenever he's played for us, so he deserves to be here. And now we move on to Ross Barkley. Now for me, I expect more. I'm sorry, I expect more, similar to Mitchley, he has got a lot of game time, a lot more compared to other talented players that never got the same opportunities. And Barkley has had a few games where he's been very good, but most of the games he's been below par. I think a lot of that's come down to confidence, and I think rushing the signing, because of course not playing for a year for Everton due to injury wasn't going to help you when you sign for a club like us, making the step up as well. But he's been here for a while, he's had pre-seasons, and I still don't think I've seen a consistent Ross Barkley that was supposed to fulfill this top class potential that he's had since he was a young player. I'm sorry you guys, I've always expected more from Ross, one of the most frustrating players in my opinion. And moving on to a player that I was completely wrong about is Olivier Giroud. Now for me, very solid player. At times it's mad that maybe someone like Mitch, he has got more minutes compared to Giroud. Unreal, kind of crazy, but Giroud has been very solid for us. Crucial goals, key goals, the hold-up play as well. The way he's had to adapt at times too, because he is a target man at heart, but I respect it, I really do. Giroud is a solid player. Now moving on to Emerson. Oh, you know what, I'm going to say I expect more. Because, a lot of times he's messed up for himself due to maybe having a bit too much fun partying in London. He started the season off really well. Really well. I mean, stats-wise, he was the best left back in the league by a mile. I think maybe Lampard plays a part because, of course, when he returned back to the team, he was rushed back, sustained 2 injuries in concession, and since then, hasn't got the game time since. But, however, it's not as if his spell here has been plagued with injuries. He just hasn't got as much game time as I'd like. For me, I think it's safe to assume that we expect more. Costa, the next guy on the list, without a doubt a flop, because he just was clearly not good enough for this level. He really wasn't. Now I know people remember certain goals against Karabat and showing the energy and the dynamism to run forward, but that's not good enough. The quality, defensively very poor. So it was so easy for wingers to get past him, and offensively, he showed effort, but again, not enough quality. And what used to frustrate me was that how many times would he take shots from outside the box? And I'm just thinking, listen, you're not Reece James here. I do not want to see my fullback taking long shots outside the box because they don't know what to do with the ball in the final third. Absolute flop. But moving on to Rudiger. Now, Rudiger's been a solid player, and I've always said this, listen, we've seen so many great defenders over the years playing for us. If Rudiger was playing alongside those guys, he would have been a squad rotation option. He has been solid for us, but, I wouldn't say top tier because, let's say in big games, I don't know of any, massive Rudiger, standout big moments just yet. I'm sorry, I'm just saying it how I see it, you guys. Moving on to Drinkwater. You know what? I'm going to say he's unlucky. He's not a flop. He's not a flop because, again, it's not his fault that he wasn't needed. And when he did play, it surprised me that maybe Conte didn't use him and Kante in midfield enough. They won a Premier League doing that for Leicester City. He wasn't given any game time, and whenever he did play, Conte was using him as a box-to-box mid. Didn't make any sense, and when I saw Conte doing that, I knew straight away that he was just signed for no reason, and because of that, it meant that Ruben and Jalabert were forced to go at the time. So, he's not a flop because he just hasn't played enough for us. For me, you're a flop if you have played and you haven't done anything. So, for me, Drinkwater's been unlucky. And now, moving on to a player that was a flop, you guys, and that is Bakayoko. Now, straight away, I knew that Bakayoko was never going to succeed because I saw the games that Monaco played in the second half of the season. I saw how they played. I saw the tactical role that Bakayoko filled. I saw how Conte uses the midfield. I saw how, we do need someone who's good on the ball, receiving the ball in the half turn and starting attacks. I knew that Bakayoko was never that player. It really showed me at the time how I don't know how Matic was underappreciated because Bakayoko was seen as a superior player because I guess he looks stronger and looked more physical and looked faster and just all physical. You know how PM, you know how it works, you guys. You know how it works. But yeah, he was a flop because of the money we spent and the fact that we'll probably never see him playing for us again. Now moving on to Ramirez. Ramirez is without doubt a cold player. Scored one of the greatest goals in this club's beautiful history against Barcelona. God knows how he even was able to pull that off. What even made him attempt that audacious finish as well? It's crazy. I don't know what divine confidence that just flooded his body at that moment in time. But whatever it was, you guys, that was the decisive moment, one of the most decisive moments in our history that really just turned the tides and gave us a chance to obviously progress past Barcelona. When he first started, I thought maybe he needed that adjustment period. It took him like at least 6-7 months to really acclimatize. In the second half of his first season, when he found a role to play box to box, yeah, he looked good. I guess we never saw enough of Ramirez because at times he was used as like on the left, on the right, or in a two-man midfield, and for me, he was always a box-to-box midfield player. It was really frustrating because I feel like if he was used in that role, you would have seen an even better Ramirez. And again, for me, it's just typical of this club signing players to use them out of position. But now we move on to Alvaro Morata. Flop, expected more. Flop or expected more. It's hard. It is hard. I would say maybe expected more, because he had like the start of his spell with us was decent, you guys. It was actually good. It was a good start to his career. Then the injuries came, and then I guess maybe issues behind the scenes as well, and things didn't work out. You know, I guess maybe the fact that we were able to get the money back for the players, why I'm not seeing him as a complete flop. However, I kind of knew that we shouldn't expect too much Morata because he was never that striker in the first place. It's just mad. I guess, I don't know. I don't know why, you know, Spanish players always get gassed up and they come for like records amount of money. I would say that Morata was a flop. I have to keep it real. I'm sorry. It's the same thing as Bakayoko. Yeah, he's a flop. Moving on to Ampadu. Definitely one for the future because we've barely seen him play, but from the minutes we've seen him play, he has looked impressive. We now move on to Kovacic, and Kovacic right now, is he top tier? I guess after this season. I'm not too sure just yet. I'm gonna have Kova as a solid player right now. Of course, there's been some amazing footballing moments produced. One of the best, you know, one of the best players of his role, you know, in that Frankie de Jong type of role, you know, someone that's very good at, you know, breaking the lines. What's the word I'm looking for that's just literally lost my head? You know, you can't tackle him basically. You cannot tackle the player. And I guess for like a counter-pressing system, he's a very good midfield player for that system. You know, his work rate's been very good. Presses on the front foot, you know, gets into tackles as well. We now move on to Rob Green, and yeah, economical signing. Moving on to Georgie Neo. Now, I'm going to have Georgie Neo as a cult signing because I know that if he does leave, or when he does leave, he is going to be remembered at this club. We are not going to forget Georgie Neo. We're not going to forget the controversy surrounding him at times because, you know, people thought maybe he was used in the wrong position because Kante should be playing there. Just completely not understanding that this was Sarri's tactics and the decisions that, you know, he wanted the team to play in. He wanted us to play in that certain role, and for those reasons, we needed Jorginho in the base. Trust, you know, Premier League media to not understand tactics is typical, but Jorginho, you know, he's had a lot of very good moments. Now, for me, he's not like a world-class player, but he is a top-class player. He definitely is a top 4 player. His work rate, his leadership, you know, that is one thing that he doesn't get enough credit for. He is very vocal. He works with the team very hard as well. He does have his limitations, but that's not the fault of the player. You know, that's why he is a regista, because that is his best role. But for me, I'm going to have fond memories on the player. Moving on to Gonzalo Higuain. Now, I'm going to have him as... I wish he got more time, to be honest. Yeah, if you're asking me if we had Higuain as a backup to Tammy Abraham for this season, I'm sure that a lot of fans would be a lot more positive with that, because it was the same thing as Kovacic. I remember last season under Sarri, fans didn't want us to make the move permanent. Now everyone loves him, and it's obvious that now he's playing in a role that suits him more, not playing as a number 8. Kovacic was able to do his thing. You know, Higuain, he had a lot of quality. He scored some great goals for us. I think he could have done more, especially if he had like a pre-season with us. And I kind of felt that maybe the club should have just signed him for this season, because I think he would have been great alongside Tammy Abraham, great mentorship as well. He's much fitter too. He would have had a gelling period in the Premier League, and he would have been like, you know, a top class option as a second striker. I wish he got more time. I liked Higuain. Moving on to Kepa Arrizabalaga. I'm not going to have him as a flop right now. I'm going to say more time. I think the next season is going to be the most crucial season for Kepa. We're going to really understand what he's really made of. Yeah, I know he costs a ton of money. I thought this season under Sarri was okay. He had more issues this season. However, I want to see how he recovers from that and how he steps up. Moving on to Christian Pulisic. Yep, it's going to definitely be a case of more time. He's had a lot of very good bright moments for us. A lot of bright moments this season. However, you know, injuries have affected the amount of consistent game time he can get. So I can't say he's been solid for those reasons, because I guess you need to have more consistent game time to make that fair and to be in that list. I say more time. Let's see what Pulisic does for next season. Hakim Ziyech, you know, I just had to have him here because, of course, you know, he makes it 2020. Obviously for the future, and that's clearly why I made this category. Now moving on to a Nigerian defender playing for Leganes right now. He's got a very decent reputation playing for that club, and yeah, everywhere he's been on loan, he has been really solid. Maybe not of the level to play for us. However, you know, when we signed him as a teenager, he was playing for the Nigerian national team, and a part of me was thinking, but I wasn't even given like a bit of game time or an opportunity to like play with the squad. I'm talking about Kenneth O'Mara, and yeah, economical signing. We now move on to the final two players in Patrick Bamford. You know what? Economical loan player, but he was unlucky because he was sent to the most stupid loan clubs of all time. Bamford went to Crystal Palace after he won like Player of the Year in the Championship, and when he signed for Palace, it's like they were using this guy as a target man. And I'm just thinking, as a club, well, how can you even allow him to sign for Crystal Palace, knowing that they only use target men and Bamford is not a target man? And now we end things with another random player for the loan army. His name was Ulysses Davila. He's currently playing for Wellington Phoenix in Australia. And again, another weird Emanalo signing. I guess for the loan army, he would have made us some profit, but it was just like, my guy that's been on Football Manager sometimes, and just like, it was like, oh, you know, this guy on my save was able to get like 16 dribbling and 16 flair, and oh, he was quite decent for me. I guess in real life it translates. No, Football Manager is not accurate. I mean, go on Football Manager now, go on N'Golo Kante, you'll see that N'Golo Kante has like 10 or 11 first touch, and I'm just thinking, the fact that Football Manager can have N'Golo Kante with 10 or 11 first touch just sums up just, I don't know, just the lack of detail at times. And it's funny that some clubs have used that game as like a scouting tool. Absolutely stupid. Of course, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, remember to like, comment and subscribe. And on that point, I'm going to wrap things up and keep things moving. I'm Nini FC. This is Bruyne Er CV. I'll see you guys later for some more videos.